on that with one catch. We had one that unfortunately, due to some unforeseen work conflicts, couldn't make it, so that's why my name is on that list. I promise to make this as entertaining and informative as possible. But what I want to do is I want to start today by offering you guys, can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I think we're good.
Perfect.
It's my coach's voice, next to be a coach. I'm going to offer you guys a free no-tech life hack. This is courtesy of Amy Cuddy, who is a social psychologist at Harvard University, and all it requires of you is this, that you change your posture for 2 minutes. That's it. But before we do anything, I want you guys to sort of take a little self-audit of what you're doing right now with your body. So how many of you are kind of making yourself smaller? Maybe you're hunching a little bit or crossing your legs. Maybe you're doing this business right here, okay? Or you might be spreading out. So maybe you've got your arm or looking on the back of the chair next to you. Nobody's got their hands behind their heads, that's good. Feet stretched out. So just think about what you're doing now. We're going to come back to this in just a little bit, and I'm hoping that if you learn to tweak this a bit, it can significantly change the way your life unfolds, and that's the truth. So the title today is What is Your Superpower? And this is basically Micromessaging 101. Micromessaging is a big word that encompasses a lot of things, and you're going to hear some of those different things today, but we're just going to do a broad overview. So what is micromessaging? That is definitely the question of the day. Micromessaging is a term that was coined by Dr. Mary Rowe at MIT, who was doing research on issues of gender and racial exclusion. And what she realized was there were these subtle, seemingly harmless messages of devaluation that were being sent to either women or people of color that were causing them to not be able to flourish.
Let's talk about yourself.
I'm great. I'm glad you're here.
It's all mine.
Okay. So who noticed the differences between those two interactions? Somebody tell me what the difference was. One was more energetic.
One was like close.
Like we had a personal relationship, right? Okay. So was I friendly to both of them? I was cordial. My words were nice. My tone was appropriate. But if this were a work situation, Kelton would leave feeling like he probably wasn't part of the in crowd, right? We had a personal connection. We bonded over cake. Me and Kelton had nothing. Everybody wants to be a part of the in crowd, guys. Nobody wants to be that guy. He's not part of the in crowd. That's who we all want to be. So that's an example. Of verbal micromessaging. Let me talk a little bit about nonverbal micromessaging. So Dr. Albert Moravian is a famous communication researcher, and he's the one who told us that 90% of our communication is nonverbal, and only 10% is comprised of the actual words that we say. So it stands to reason that most of our micromessages are going to be nonverbal. Okay? Nonverbal micromessages may be something like eye contact, or head nods, or maybe something like gesture, like looking at your watch when someone's talking or texting on your phone, right? Those are all examples of nonverbal micromessages. They can be seen as positive, so positive micromessages are called microadvantages, or they can be seen as negative, and negative micromessages are microinequities. You'll learn a little bit more about that later. So social scientists have spent a whole lot of time looking at the effects of body language and the effects of other people's body language on our judgments. We as humans tend to make these huge, sweeping judgments and inferences based on body language. And sometimes these judgments can predict really meaningful life outcomes, like who we hire, or who we promote, who we choose as a friend, and even who we decide to choose as a life partner. So, Nalini Ambady is this researcher at Tufts University, and she did a really interesting study. What she did was she brought these random participants in. She had them watch a 30-second soundless clip of physician-patient interactions. And afterwards, she asked these participants to rate the physician, like what were his interactions? They couldn't hear anything, but what do you think about him? Ambady was able to predict which physicians would be sued based on the fact that people thought they were nice. So the ones that thought they were probably a nice guy or a nice girl, they probably weren't getting sued, didn't have anything to do with how competent they were as a physician. It's a little bit scary, right? Another dramatic study was conducted by Alex Todorov at Princeton University. And he did a study where he brought participants in and had them look at a 1-second clip of a political candidate's face and do the same thing. Tell me about this political candidate after you look at it. And they were able to predict with a 70% accuracy which candidates would win the U.S. Senate or gubernatorial races that they were participating in. And that was all on a 1-second judgment. So it's a little bit fascinating that we can make a judgment about somebody in 1 second. You know how everybody says first impressions are the most important? Apparently you have 1 second. They're right. So the impact of micromessages in the workplace. We know that they're there. We know nonverbal and verbal communication is important. But what are the implications of how these judgments that we create as a result of micromessaging impact others in the workplace? The cumulative effect of micro advantages, so those positive micromessages, can lead to profound feelings of inclusion, can lead you to feel like there are opportunities for advancement and development within your organization. So if you buy in, if you feel like your superiors, your subordinates, your peers are giving you positive micromessages, you're more likely to feel like you're on the team, there's a place for you to grow and learn here. As a matter of fact, from 1993 to 1998, Gallup conducted thousands of interviews across all industries, all levels of organization, around the world, and they came up with these 12 statements. These 12 statements predict employee performance. These statements have been used in employee engagement surveys around the world today. But they all have one common denominator, and that was the thought that employees who are successful and engaged will be successful and engaged if they feel like they're part of the team. And we know that. If we feel like we're part of the team, we're more than likely going to make sure that we are engaged in our workplace and successful in what we do because we have something to work for. But on the flip side, there was a study entitled Micro Inequities in the Workplace, and that study indicated that 6 out of 8 employees who quit their jobs cited micro inequities as a reason for doing so. So it's a flip side, right? We've got the positive can cause great engagement, the negative can cause employees to leave and go find, somewhere else that they can be successful. So I know that all of you want to be a positive impact. Now let me give you a little hint. We're talking about workplace here. Micromessages are impactful in every relationship that you have. Children, parents, friends, community, whatever it is. They're important and they are impactful. So I know you all want to be positive, a positive impact in your homes and communities. So first, you've got to figure out what types of micromessages are you sending. Here's just a few. Do you offer a weak handshake with no eye contact? Do you listen with your arms crossed across your chest? Do you lose eye contact when someone speaks to you? Do you text, read, check email as someone is talking to you? Do you look at your watch while somebody is talking? Do you hover over someone when they work? Do you reply with sarcasm? This is a very small sampling, obviously, but a reality check, is it not? Because I know I'm probably using 5 of those. And we do it in the name of multitasking or, trying to keep up with our business, but really it's just rude. So, don't do it anymore. So the main point of this slide is to tell you, when you speak, all of you speak, and sometimes you don't even have to open your mouth to speak. And you speak. So you guys are powerful. You may not know this, but you're very powerful. You have the ability to change the tone of a room, of any size, based on the types of micromessages that you were sending. That makes you very powerful. But here's the question. What if you don't feel powerful, right? Some days we just aren't feeling it. We tend to forget that the other audience that's influenced by our nonverbal behavior is ourselves, okay? So one of the most interesting speeches I've ever heard in my life was by the social psychologist from Harvard I talked about earlier, named Amy Cuddy. And in her lecture, she details the research behind her claim that your body language shapes who you are. So she explains that in the animal kingdom, power is displayed by making yourself bigger. So they expand animals from all over the place. Guys, Guys, this isn't limited to animals. People do it too. They feel powerful, they get big. Okay? The opposite is true when people do not feel powerful, or animals. Animals get smaller, people get smaller, bring themselves in. So we know that our nonverbal micromessages govern how other people feel about us. But we also know that the way we feel about ourselves determines how we treat others. And here's a case in point. I have 3 sons. This is my oldest son, Travis. Travis is a little bit different. Travis has Asperger's, which is a form, or it's under the autism spectrum disorder. So anyone who knows about autism or Asperger's knows that he's a little different, right? He's wearing a top hat and vintage welding goggles. I mean, he's weird. I call it quirky because it sounds much cuter. But Travis is an amazing kid. The most amazing thing about him is he is unapologetically who he is, and he has more self-confidence than any kid I have ever seen in my life, any adult, really. The other day, he was running around in the backyard, and he had on his younger brother's robe and slippers, so it looked like a smoking jacket. He looked like he had, I was like, what are you doing? And he's running around with some like Tupperware, and he's jumping in the air. I'm like, what are you doing? And he said, there's a big moth. I want to study it. I'm trying to catch it. I was like, okay. And he just looked at me and said, I have weirdness. I mean, it wasn't an excuse. He wasn't playing it off. That's just who he is, and he totally embraces it. He is good with it. His self-confidence will hold up most days, but every now and then we have a bad day, and he'll get picked on, and I'll have to remind him. The reason that people pick on you is not because of who you are, it's because of who they are. Right? We tell our kids, our parents have told us, bullies pick on people because they don't feel good about themselves, right? So we know that our nonverbal micromessages impact how others think and feel about us, but we also know that the way we think and feel about ourselves impacts how we treat others. So Amy Cuddy and her research partner, whose name was Dana Carney, and she's from Berkeley, what they really wanted to know was, we know our minds can change our behavior, but can our behavior change our minds? This study was life-changing for me, no joke. Here's what they did. They brought people into the lab, and they had them spit in a vial. And then they took them to a room, and they told them to sit or stand in a specific way. So they either put them in a high-power pose. These are high-power poses. That one with the hands on hips, that's the Wonder Woman. That's what they called it. Or they put them in a low-power pose. They didn't tell them what they were called. They just said, sit like this or stand like this for 2 minutes. When the 2 minutes was up, they went back in and had them spit into a vial again. Now, what they were measuring in the saliva was the levels of testosterone, which is our dominance or power hormone, and levels of cortisol, which is our stress hormone. The findings were amazing. After 2 minutes, they checked these levels, and from the baseline when they came in, high power pose people experienced a 20% increase in the power hormone testosterone. The low power pose people experienced a 10% decrease in that power hormone, or dominance hormone, testosterone. On the flip side, folks who sat in that high power pose experienced a 25% decrease in cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And folks who sat in those low power poses experienced a 15% increase in that stress hormone, cortisol. That's all in 2 minutes. It's a biological change. That's amazing. So 2 minutes led to these hormonal changes that either configure your brain to either be assertive and confident and comfortable, or kind of shut down and stress reactive, all in 2 minutes. So it seems that our nonverbals do govern how we think and feel about ourselves, but also apparently our bodies can change our minds. That is a great tool. So here's what I want you to glean from all this. I'm going to kind of recap it all for you. Everyone is a micro-messenger. We don't know we do it. It's as automatic as breathing. We need to be cognizant of it if we're going to be great leaders. Nonverbal micro-messages impact our judgment and perceptions of others, and vice versa. And apparently they also impact our judgments of ourselves. We have the ability to increase engagement, including our own in the workplace, and really increase satisfaction in all relationships based on the types of micro-messages that we're sending. And then my personal favorite, if your own feelings of personal value and power are holding you back, there's good news. You guys have a quick 2-minute tool. I mean, it's there. If Maurice is looking for me, I'm probably in the bathroom stall. So the good news is you can fake it till you make it. And if you're not feeling it that day, you can totally change your chemistry in your body to feel more powerful. So before the next interaction or the next meeting or even the next stressful event, I encourage you, Amy Cuddy's power poses are off the chain. You want to do it. They configure your brain to be the best you can be in this situation. So be a change agent, be a positive impact, make sure you start with yourself, but do that in your communities, do that in your workplaces. So I have one more question, and you've probably all heard this before, but if you're driving down the road and you change your steering wheel 2 to 3 degrees, what happens? You veer off, you go a different way, you're going to be on a different path, right? Your course is altered. So tiny tweaks can result in huge changes. Huge changes in the way you perceive yourself, huge changes in the way others perceive you, a huge impact to the way that others feel and the satisfaction that they can gain in their place of employment or in their community. So evaluate these tiny tweaks and these tiny changes that you can make, and exhibit them in your relationships and be that positive change agent. You can do it. You can change the tone in the room.